Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And here on the Hobby Channel, we have been joining the cult of content creators trying to make faction focuses for every single Warhammer 40k faction that gets an index.
And it's been an endeavor, generations in the making.
It's only been a couple days, but it feels like generations.
Yes.
If anyone tells you to make 27 videos for your first time out doing video editing in a week, tell them no. But we are now getting into the Xenos, which are fun and weird. And one of the weirdest, it has come time for them to rise up and steal control of the channel. Today, we're talking about the Genestealer Cults, which are one of the coolest, most horrific factions in the Xenos lineup. Maybe even more horrific than their parent faction, the Tyranids.
Yes.
And to really understand how that is and why their rules are so weird when we get to them, you gotta know the fluff.
Yeah, so there's a lot to fit into this small video. So to give you the most bare bones story is that an Genestealer cult is created by a Genestealer landing on a planet and slowly indoctrinating and infecting generations of humans to be part of the cult. And different generations have different subsects and different manifestations that change the bioforms of humans to slowly and incrementally infiltrate the government and the military and the workforce to then eventually rise up, take control of the planet, and allow the Tyranids to come wipe it clean and eat all the biomass. And within that framework is dozens of different cults that all do things differently, view things differently. There's some that view the Emperor as a four-armed Emperor instead of a two-armed, what we see as the normal Imperium Emperor. Mm-hmm. There are other ones who view it as a completely nihilistic, dark concept of we have been abused for so long as workers that the only thing left for us to do to fix the system is to break it entirely and allow it to be eaten by a bigger force. Who view it almost as an entropic thing. Mm-hmm. There is so much in this faction, and to be honest, it has some of the deepest and most fun lore. It is very unique. All of the units have very specific things about them that make them different from one another, lore-wise and rules-wise. And if you're looking for a faction that you really, really want to just master, or you want to grab a hold of and just chew through for a long time, Genestealer Cults is a really good one. And it has a great cult following in the fan base. That's not just a good little pun joke. It's true. There's lots of content creators out there, lots of different people play Genestealer Cult, and they've been good and bad throughout all the editions they've been out. But everyone still stays with them. They're similar to orcs in that regard. Once you kind of start Genestealer Cults, you don't really hop off of Genestealer Cults. You just put them away and might take them back out.
It's a Hotel California situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Once you're in the cult, you don't leave.
Yeah. And their units are all sort of cult members that speak to the idea that this is a cult that is growing rather rapidly, but the easiest people in a society to indoctrinate and infect are those at the lowest rungs. Hence why
the most disaffected.
You see a lot of them, because they are already angry at their living situation and how they've been treated. So they are ripe to be sort of corralled into this generations-long scheme.
Yeah, radicalized into this revolution, essentially.
Which for them oftentimes looked like they're the heroes. Until, the space bugs appear. Which is just... and the way that this revolution works is through guerrilla warfare. Just incredible amounts of ambush guerrilla warfare. Hitting and running in these never-ending waves of disposable bodies. Which brings into their faction rule, which is Cult Ambush. Cult Ambush is over there. There's a lot of text. If you're wanting to play Genestealers, I recommend you read it a bunch of times. I had to read it multiple times.
I'd print it out. I'd put it next to you on your table so you can read it whenever you're playing.
There's a lot going on. So, when a Genestealer cult unit from your army is destroyed, every time that happens, you roll 1d6. And on a 4-up, that unit is placed into Cult Ambush. And you get to add 3 to that roll if it is a battle line unit. Meaning that, your little baseline nobodies guaranteed to pass that roll. For every one of those units that make the roll, you get to add a little 32mm marker, Cult Ambush marker on the board somewhere. And it stays there, and in your opponent's following movement phase, if they have a unit that walks within 9 inches of your ambush cult marker, it is removed from the board because they have discovered your sort of feigned attempt to get the drop on them. They found your patrol, essentially. But for those that they do not get, you get to set up one of your destroyed units back on the board in contact with the Cult Ambush marker without their heroes, and then it gets to activate like a normal unit. Man, that was a lot of words.
It's a lot of words, but it's very, very cool and very, very fun.
So, if I'm fighting John's Genestealer cult and I kill his baseline troop, they're probably coming back next turn. And the next turn. And the next turn. And the next turn. And the next turn. And they're gonna keep swarming me with bodies until I can stop all the ambush markers or just table the force. It's very good. Now, the one note is that these units, when they come back, in addition to not being able to keep their heroes, also still count as having been killed. So for things that give victory points for killing units, this does not get around those. You still get points because you killed it. It just, another group showed up.
Yeah.
So it's distinct, which I'm a big fan of. So as you can understand, there's a big ambush sub-theme for this force. I mean, not even sub-theme. It's the main theme.
It's the thing you do, yeah.
It's ambush and the song 16 Tons. That is the entirety of the flavor of the faction. And they get a detachment rule for this called Ascension Day, which is the day where they overthrow the government to be ready to rise up for the Star Gods. In the ability, they came from below.
Yes. So with they came from below, every time you bring something in as reinforcements, so it doesn't just have to be when you use your army rule, but also if they have deep strike normally, for that next, until the end of your next fight phase, weapons equipped by models in that have sustained hits 1 and ignores cover. So the important thing is it's both shooting and melee.
Yes.
So you can have stuff coming in and using a lot of these things to just really, really, really put the hurt on your opponent as they pop up, do an ambush, do everything they're supposed to do, and then they're probably going to get charged or shot to death. But they're going to maximize when they came out and did the ambush to kind of disrupt your opponent's plans.
Jump out, surprise, die. That's whole job.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, ignoring cover means that it's really hard to bunker against them, which is very useful. I like to imagine that's because they're setting off demolition charges on terrain that they set up ahead of time, or the sustained hits, which is always good. Sustained hits is one of the best keywords in this game. Sustained hits, lethal hits, and devastating wounds. If you see that, pay attention.
Them's good attacks right there, especially for this group who really want to drown you in firepower most of the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for them, quantity is the quality, so to speak. And Genestealer cults, one of the things that makes them so fun is that, they have an ambush sub-theme, of course. But as we mentioned, there are different branches of the cult. And that means that there are a number of different types of units in the Genestealer Cults, which kind of play different from one another, depending on what they are. They have everything from, like, guys on vehicles, so you get, like, trucks and dirt bikes and grinders and things like that. You get normal humans with guns, so, like, Imperial Guard regiments. You get, like, monsters, aberrants, that are, you know, big hulking monstrosities with, like, power picks and stuff, and acolytes with, like, drills and whatnot that they pulled out of their minds.
You can even take, like, some of the models from Astra Militarum into this army. Like, you're limited to up to 500 points, but you can bring them over and, like, you can kit bash them to make them look like they're part of the cult, and then all of a sudden, boom, you got a bunch of, like, cult stuff.
You infiltrated the Imperial Guard. But that makes it hard for us, because normally we like to pick a data sheet apiece that we think is representative of the Force, but this Force is very diverse in its little subfactions, so it's hard to say, like, ha, here is the end-all be-all to show it all. So instead, we just pick stuff we like and think is cool and flavorful. And for me, that is right here, the Achilles ridgerunner. It is a Toyota Tacoma with machine guns. Let's not mince words. This is a tactical. I will be taking no questions. I am right. And I love that about it. So it's got a really impressive movement stat at 12-inch move. It's T7, which is just tough enough to where you have to use pseudo anti-armor to bring it down. And with a 3-up save, you know, it's not going to die very easily to small arms fire and 8 wounds. And it's got an objective control of 3, which means it can take objectives from little, like, OC1 units trying to hold on a backline or whatever. But really, you take this because, one, it has Scout 9, so it's going to move 9 inches right off the rip and start getting up there, which is really good. And it's got quite a number of guns itself, so quite a barrage. But, what this does that I think is worth its weight in gold is crossfire. So each time this unit has crossfire! Yeah, so every time this unit is shot, select one enemy unit that was hit by one or more of the attacks until the end of the phase. Each time a friendly GSC unit makes an attack that targets that enemy unit, improve the armor penetration characteristic by 1. Oh.
That's a lot of shots that are going to get a lot more rend.
Yeah. Like, one of the weaknesses of this Force, generally speaking, is that its shots are very low value. You know, it's people with, like, the worst little stubber machine guns they could find, or, like, power tools and nail guns and stuff like that, that do not get access to AP. Vast majority of the time, which can be a problem.
I do love that a good portion of this army is just, hey, I have, like, a Dualt power drill, and I'm here to take on, like, this 9-foot-tall monstrosity.
I am ready. But it does mean that high armor units can be kind of difficult for these units. This helps shift the math in your favor artificially. That's really nice. It takes this truck, which not only does damage and moves fairly quickly to, like, get up in there and harass your opponent, but it makes it a tech piece to give the rest of your force a buff to gun down targets that you deem valuable. Yeah. And so also remember, you can do this to a unit and then hit it with something that was set up that turn. And now they're getting the sustained hits and ignoring cover. So now that rend is more likely to go through because it won't be negated by cover.
You're layering buffs,
which is the name of the game for GSC. But yeah, I really like the Achilles ridgerunner. I've always greatly enjoyed the model, but I don't think the rules were necessarily always super compelling. But here, this is a great little niche to push it into. Huge fan.
All right, well, now it's time for me to talk about my favorite unit in this book. It has been my favorite unit of Genestealer Cult this entire time. It is Billy the Nid himself, the Kellermorph. Right? He, in the lore, is a gunfighter that is a living icon of rebellion. It says it right over here, right? And what that kind of means is that he is raised and created by the Patriarch and, like, biologically designed to be like a hero, like a gunfighting hero for the people to embolden them to continue with the rebellion. And so he'll show up in the middle of combat and like shoot down an enemy hero and then disappear, or like have a gunfight duel with like an enemy like leader and, you know, see what happens. Like, he's not here to kill tanks. He's not here to take out huge masses of troops, but he's really good at showing up, killing some ancient 1,000-year-old Eldar warrior with a sniper rifle with like a bunch of Colt 45s and then disappearing like he's in Assassin's Creed.
God, I feel like I need to watch Tombstone after this.
It's really good.
I'm a huge fan of this Western sub-theme. God.
Yeah, he has no defensives, really.
None.
Like, his defensives is that he has lone operative and deep strike. But his range weapons have devastating wounds, pistol, so he can use it in combat if he wanted to, precision, so he can target heroes even if they're in units, and sustained hits D3.
Oh. And on 6 shots, one of those is probably going to trigger.
Yeah, and it's really, really good. Only 12-inch range, so that's fine. You're going to be getting in close, and I'm going to tell you how you're going to do that here in a second. He's got 6 shots, so he shoots bam, 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 bam. He's like fanning the hammer. 6 shots all the way through. Ballistic skill 2. They're going to hit. Strength 5, no AP. Just kidding. If you target a unit with your ridgerunner, it's -1. Look, it's a combo.
Combos!
But his hero ability is what really helps him, right? So first, cometh the hour, cometh the hero.
What a name.
It's a lot of words, but what it means is you can deep strike this unit 3 inches away instead of 9 inches away from enemy models, long as it's also 3 inches from a battle line unit of yours. So if you have guys fighting, you can bring in this guy to do what he needs to do. Kind of like shows up through the crowd to pew, pew,
It's like the stranger
disappear.
from Fallout. Like, it really is. Like, you're in the middle of a fight and everything's going poorly, and then this desperado appears at high noon and blam, 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 blam.
And even then, if that was it, I would also still take him. But they gave him another ability because he didn't have enough, right?
He needs more. Always more.
In addition, if an enemy unit shoots a battle line unit that's within 3 inches of him, he can then look at them and be like, "You shot my boys," and then light them up.
And
it's so good.
to double dip on those shooting phases. And again, you're going to trigger them keywords on some of these attacks. And them some spicy keywords.
Yeah, like it's just gonna bam, 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 bam. Like, beware the Kellermorph. He will take stuff down, and he's normally pretty cheap. Like, he's normally a cheap hero.
And even if he, if he doesn't take stuff down, he's got to look hella cool doing it. I mean, like, can we all agree that he gets, like, the Drip of the Week award? Because he should.
He does.
He should. We've unanimously voted. I'm sorry. The voting polls are closed. God, what a cool unit. But again, the combos are really where you find the power. You have to be able to pair things together or they're going to kind of fumble. And for us, that's where we want to get to next is this week we have said that there are a fair amount of units, well, not units, armies that are kind of difficult to learn and some that are more easy to learn. And that's a sort of sliding scale. And a lot of the times we would encourage people who are really interested in a faction to run into it anyway, and you'll figure it out on the way, and you're going to have a good time. Genestealer Cults, though, in terms of the difficulty scale, are, like, at the top. They are galaxy brain ambush combos that have to play with the movement game, you got to play with the tokens, and you've got to make sure everything's working in concert while constantly bringing stuff back, and it's a complicated force if you're into it. And I think that's part of the appeal. But we want to leave you with practical tips that you can use while trying to learn the complicated force to make it just a little easier for you if you're someone out there who has looked at these models and said, oh, hell yeah.
Yes.
John.
We said it about AdMech, we'll say it here. This is one of those factions where you see it and you go, I have to. That's my shit.
That's for you.
That's this faction.
You'll know if you're into it or not. John, what would be your big tip for people trying to learn GSC?
My big tip is, like, really focus heavily. Like, it's pretty normal especially when you're new to the game, to focus on, oh, what am I going to shoot? What's my shooting going to be like? What's my fighting going to be like? really focus on movement phase. It is the most important phase for this force, is positioning and movement. And you can position yourself poorly, and your opponent can then completely nullify your cult ambush.
Oof.
But if you position yourself perfectly, even giving up shooting with some units to screen out portions of the board, you can prevent your opponent from stopping your stuff from coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can just keep generating more guys. Like, you can give up units, except that you can lose units to stop to zone control your opponent so that you can bring more stuff back. This is fully like a wave force. This is probably the most unique army in 40k that doesn't play like any other force. It is playing a different game. So really take your time to learn it from the ground up.
Yeah, I think that's good. For me, it comes down to using overwhelming force. There are a lot of armies in the game, especially the more elite ones, where when your unit moves out on the battlefield, they can go one-on-one with stuff, no problem.
Yeah.
They're going to have a straight-up fight. They're going to go one-to-one, maybe one-on-two. And, they still come out okay. Stuff like Terminators, stuff like Custodes, big Wraith Blades, these big stompy units and armies that are really meant to do that. This ain't that force. It's not. You are not going to be winning one-on-one fights a vast majority of the time. So
sometimes you will win games without killing very many models.
Yeah, it's just not good at it. But when you decide something has to die, hit it with everything in the kitchen sink.
Literally.
Yeah. Like, one of those guys probably has a kitchen sink. Look at the Abominant model.
Look at the Abominant model, hits people with stop signs. Like
kitchen sink?
Let's go.
So when you decide a threat has to die, hit it with your Achilles ridgerunner to light it up for -1 rend. Do your deep strike so that 2 of those units are going to get buffs. Come at it with a melee unit to back you up so that once it's whittled down a little bit from the shooting, jump them. Hit them with some psychic stuff if you can. Come on up there. Make it happen. Really throw everything at it to ensure that you don't bounce and then get counter-punched badly. Because that has happened. A couple times. As John looks at the wars he has fought in. Yeah. This is a hard army to learn. I don't want to mince words about it, because I want to be very clear about what army is meant for what people, and what you're into and what you're not. But if you are into this force, you are going to probably have questions. Unless you are just galaxy brained, in which case, why are you watching us? But I'm going to just assume that you might have some questions when you go look through this book, because it's real complicated. And if you do, please feel free to drop them in the comments down below. We are happy to answer them, or send them questions over on social media. We're happy to get them there as well. We like to help people in general, but for the hard forces, we really, really want to leave the door wide open. And hopefully it doesn't let a Genestealer in.
Oh, it will, but we'll deal with it. It'll be all right.
You're assuming we're not in the cult already.
Woo!
Maybe this is just a way to get new recruits. This whole video thing. That's a story. And if you're not into the Genestealer cult and you're not into Westerns, that's okay. Just a shame. Please check out the channel. There are other videos over there where we have focused on so many other factions, and hopefully one of them works for you, even if this one doesn't. But no shame. For now, that's been all of our opinions, bona fide, and Kentucky Fried. See y'all in the next one.